think somebody tried to
Mic check.
register somebody at his address, because it's the same freaking name.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or, that's all we do, make, I mean.
Yeah, I got 2 o'clock.
2 o'clock.
Okay. Okay. Good afternoon. Welcome to the May 19th, 2026 regular board meeting for the Brunswick County Board of Elections. We all rise and say the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Next item on the agenda is adjustments or approval for the agenda. Do you have any comments, additions, deletions, corrections?
None.
Not hearing any. All in favor of
Aye.
adopting the agenda? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carry unanimously. Next item on the agenda is a voter challenge that we heard part of the last meeting. And the the challenged voter was Charles Ellis. And he was challenged by Charles Ellis Michael Jr. Is Mr. Charles Ellis with us today? Well, you're the challenger, correct, sir? Okay, I'm looking for the person that was being challenged. Okay. All right. At that point, since we don't have anybody here to represent the voter being challenged, the evidentiary hearing, which would have determined whether the person was a U.S. citizen, resided in the county, was at least 18, or had been serving a felony sentence, it's kind of moot. Mr. Batten, you have any words of wisdom, sir?
No. You can speak, ask Ms. Levere a few questions
Okay,
to get
Madam
some facts
Director?
on the record.
You swear me.
Yeah, do you affirm that the words you're about to say are the truths, nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Have we had any contact from the challenged voter?
No, sir.
Okay. Has, at this point, it seems to me that there's no point in following an evidentiary hearing because there's nobody here to question.
I will say that the voter challenge form is notarized and is part of your record.
Okay. And that was from the previous meeting?
Yes, sir.
That was dated from February the 18th by the director.
She notarized it. Yes, sir.
I'm sorry?
She notarized it. Yes.
Yes. That's what okay. At this point, the board would vote on whether or not the challenge should be upheld. Is that correct, Mr. Batten?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Do we have any discussion?
Just, yeah,
Go ahead.
just as a point of clarification, so the person, there's been no registered votes, I'm sorry, by Charles Ellis, and so,
No, sir. No votes cast.
okay. The other thing is that at this point in time, if we approve the challenge, then what we need to do is to remove this registration from the record. Is that correct?
Yes, that would be part of what the board would direct is that we cancel or correct the voter registration. So in this case, likely cancel the registration.
Right. Okay. That's all I have. Thank you very much.
I have just one quick question, once again. If this voter had not been challenged, when would our system have identified it and removed it?
So if the voter stayed registered and did not ever appear to vote, what would happen is after 2 federal general elections, the board would have sent a mailing to that voter. If that came back undeliverable, that record would have become inactive. After 2 more federal general elections, the record could be removed if we had no official contact with the voter. So it could have been 8 years.
8 years before the system would have.
Before the
removed it.
system would have automatically removed the record.
And by federal elections, we're indicating presidential and then the off-year federal
Midterm.
elections.
Mhm.
So
Yes.
that's how we get the
Yeah,
8
every
years.
2 years.
Okay.
Those happen, yes.
That seems like a very long time.
It is the law. Oh. Okay. At this point, the chair would entertain a motion to substantiate the challenge and remove okay. Mr. Charles Ellis off of the rolls. And the chair would also note that that individual should not be confused with Mr. Charles Ellis Michael Jr. residing at the same address. His registration would not be affected by this. All right, we have a motion to remove the Charles Ellis registration from the voter rolls. Any discussion?
Well, first I want to make a motion to show that there was no evidence presented by the challenge voter to contradict the application by Mr. Michael, stating they were unable to, or not promised properly registered. So that's gonna be the first one. We're gonna agree with the application upon Mr. Michael that the challenge voter did not show up. Therefore, there's been no evidence to the contrary to show that he is actually a registered voter. So that's gonna be my first motion.
Well said, madam. Okay, we have a motion, as Paul had just stated. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay,
And then my follow-up motion would be that the board would direct the director to remove the voter registration for Charles Ellis from our voter rolls.
we have a motion to remove Charles Ellis voter record. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Carry unanimously. Madam Director, one question if I could. The challenged voter Charles Ellis, has that been referred to the state for an investigation?
It has.
We have not heard anything back from them yet?
No, however, I do want to note that it would not be typical for us to hear back as the state board handles investigations and active investigations are considered confidential on their level. So they would not share any information back with us.
Would, at the conclusion of their investigation, would they, when it's closed out, do they normally share anything?
I couldn't answer that. I know historically when we heard things to the state, I have found out after an indictment happened and came out in the news. So I don't know that I would be aware of anything
All right. It's not part of,
prior to, you know.
it's not to be considered part of the normal state function to report back the findings and any action they take.
I don't believe so. No.
Okay. All right. Mr. Batten, anything else from a legal perspective that we need to pursue here?
No, sir.
Okay. Moving right along.
Thank you for your service.
Approval of minute meetings. I'm sorry, excuse me. I'm jumping ahead. Public comment, anyone, sir?
For the record, I'm Ray Parkle, I live in Oak Island, and I am the North Carolina Democratic Party's election liaison to Brunswick County. I noticed, just today at each one of these board meetings, we start out with the Pledge of Allegiance, which I guess some of the older of us probably did every day growing up in school. Glad to see it though. It ends by affirming that we are one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. One of the things that is probably most significant in our capability of ensuring that liberty and justice for all is by making it easy to vote, make it understood that people can vote and so on and so forth, and that each vote is counted equally and fairly. The first two, especially the part about making it easy to vote, really falls on the shoulders of the people in this room. And accessibility to voting, and particularly early voting, I think is an important aspect of that. Two things I've heard many times in this very room is that we are growing so fast, adding registered voters hand over fist, and that we're having difficulty finding locations to hold early voting. And it seems to me that if we're going to try to make voting easy for people, but we can't find additional places to do it, the obvious way to expand that is to extend the number of days and number of hours for early voting. Okay. And quite honestly, in the years that I worked for these people and in the roughly year I've been observing you guys. I've got nothing but respect for what you guys do and how you handle it, doing everything to make things as fair and upfront to the citizens of the county as you possibly can. So with all that said, I am just basically here to urge you to, as you make your plans for early voting for the general election this fall, to seriously consider expanding the number of days and number of hours of early voting to make it easier on the citizenry to get in there and actually do what they're supposed to be entitled to do. That's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Anyone else? Okay. Next item on the agenda is the approval of meeting minutes from 4/21/26. Has everybody had an opportunity to review the minutes? Any comments, questions, suggestions? Hearing none, all in favor of approving the minutes? Aye. Aye. Opposed? It carries unanimously. Madam Director,
Okay.
we're up to you.
So I've got a few short items for director's report. First, I would like to recognize Kathy Newland. Kathy was recently recognized by the county for being an employee for 5 years. So they sent over a certificate, and when we get these, I bring the employee and read them in front of you. Thank you for your service. I appreciate it.
Oh, that's so nice.
Okay, the next item I wanted to discuss is just provide an update on a visit that myself and Melissa Chambers, Adrienne Rushton, and Butch Johnson made. We went to the North Carolina General Assembly for an elections legislative day. And so this event was organized by the State Board of Elections in conjunction with the North Carolina Association of Directors of Elections. And the intent of it was to arrange meetings and have an opportunity for those that make the rules to interact with and meet the people that conduct elections and to try to bridge some of the gaps, build relationships. We did have an opportunity to have individual one-on-one meetings with both Charlie Miller and Frank Eiler. We did bring some items to them for discussion that were part of a larger set of priorities from the Directors Association. And I just wanted to highlight the two of them that I thought were the most important. One of them is to align election timelines with operational realities. There are several things that we have deadlines and timelines on that do not really work with the reality of conducting an election. And so one of those would be having to have provisional ballots researched and counted by the Friday, which is 3 days after the election. So there is a desire to extend that on behalf of election administrators. Another is to allow early voting ballots and the tabulation of those to happen earlier on election day. Currently, we cannot start that process until the polls close at 7:30 p.m. It is a time-consuming process, or it can be when other things are going on. So allowing staff to start that process earlier in the day. The other item that we really tried to stress is the ability to have flexibility in early voting schedules. Back long time ago, in a land far away, pre-2017, county boards were actually given the ability to decide what hours for early voting would work best for their voters. I think that worked really well here in Brunswick County. With our population, we know what the trends look like for voter turnout. And so with the required Monday through Friday hours of 8 a.m. until 7:30 p.m., we have a lot of hours where the early voting sites have to be fully staffed, where we don't see a lot of voters coming. And so we would really like to see counties have the ability to decide what hours work best for them.
Okay.
That's all.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Just a quick question, sir. When you, in your conversations, did you get a feeling that the listeners were receptive to those three items?
I think probably, I think that, I think both Representatives Eiler and Miller have heard from me over the years when election items come up, and I do provide some feedback on the realities. And honestly, I think both of them have a pretty good understanding of the challenges we face. Being that Frank Eiler, when I first started working here, was the Republican Party chair. So he was often at our meetings and, you know, participating in the process here on the ground. And then Charlie Miller was on the school board and also worked for the sheriff's office. So we had a lot of coordination with him. I think they both were receptive to the ideas and the desires of election administrators as a whole. So those are things that we did bring. We had the conversation on behalf of Brunswick County, but also on behalf of the association as a whole, so statewide.
Okay.
I have a comment.
Sure.
So the first two items you discussed was the extending the time to count provisionals and the early
Tabulation.
tabulation. Okay, wasn't those the rules like 2 years ago?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Gentlemen? Okay. Nothing else, madam?
I do not.
Okay. The attachment to Sarah's comments were the new statistics word that I can never spit out of my mouth. And I'd just like to make an observation that as of the end of April, we're listed with 146,635 registered voters in Brunswick County. And just doing a little bit of straight line projection, we should be breaking 150,000 registered voters in Brunswick County by the end of this calendar year, which would make us where we stand today at the 14th largest county in the state. Just
Must be nice to be retired to have time to figure those things out.
it's a habit that I had done professionally and I can't get away from. It does tend to fill time though. So, at the rate we're going, I would suspect that, we may be passing Iredell County, which is county just ahead of us, sometime next year. And it's just indicative of the growth that we are experiencing and the challenges that we face in the county. And that's the only thing I had on that.
Sarah?
Mhm.
Talking about the monthly report, you got a verifications mailed out, 3785.
Mhm.
That's a big number. Is that just normal process or is that part of a project?
Verifications mailed out. So I can tell you that that large number is probably because we were processing all of the backlog of voter registrations from prior to the election. So those cards go out after we process the registration, not based on when they were received. So after February, early February, I can't recall the exact date. We held all voter registration forms in a queue. And so we mailed those out after we got those processed.
You generally see that after every election, there's a blip.
Mhm.
Okay.
Thank you, Kathy. That's exactly what that was.
Okay.
The catching up of all the registrations in the queues.
Is there any update on the voter list maintenance projects, the state board and all that stuff? I get confused with the names.
Yeah, not that I have seen. I know that the state board sent out a press release last week about some rules that they're trying to adopt. I have to be honest, I'm not entirely familiar with what those are or the process. I don't know that they have been adopted. I haven't received any
You're talking about the
updated.
proposed rules, right?
Yes,
Yeah,
yes,
those-
I
those
haven't
go through
received
review.
any updates about anything being
Yeah, those are going
finalized.
through public comment now, if I follow them right.
Mhm. Yes, I believe they're up for public comment now. Mhm.
Meetings tomorrow.
Meetings tomorrow.
Okay, any other questions? Next item on the agenda is a presentation on census blocks from Mr. Johnson
Yes.
and the director.
Well, I'm on there just to kick it off because this is Butch's area of expertise. I'm very fortunate to have people in the office that know things and know more than I do. And I am smart enough to recognize when I need to not take over. So essentially what we wanted to take the opportunity to do is really give the board a visual explanation of what a census block is. You know, we talk about this every time we talk about splitting a precinct or changing a boundary, that the boundary of the precinct has to follow a census block. And it sounds very abstract. So Butch is going to try to, bring it into focus and make it a little clearer for you.
All right, so census blocks, basically they're the smallest geographic area used by the United States to count people. They generally are pretty small. In a city, they can be really small. When you get to a more rural area, they can become quite large. Usually they're bordered by various things, roads, streams, and things like that. Those are visual features. So you got your roads, your railroads, your rivers, your creeks, things like that. You'll see it a lot in coastal areas. The creeks and all the streams and tributaries make it very easy to make a census block. If you get out, I imagine you get out somewhere around Arizona, your census block is going to be very square. Then there's also non-visible boundaries. These are city borders, township lines, school districts, commissioners' districts, NC House district lines. Property lines can also be used. And in rare circumstances, if you have a creek that ends, but it ends just before a property line, you can extend that line out to create a contiguous block. It's easier to understand when you see it in the graphics. Okay, why do we do this? Elections districts, precincts are always used doing census blocks. It's the smallest unit of population data that we can get. It's also in North Carolina General Statute for Elections Law that they have to coincide with census block boundaries that are set forth in Tiger, which is on the next slide. For the most recent federal decennial census, every 10 years they do a census, and every 10 years they make new blocks. They actually make new blocks more often than that, but we have to go with the 10-year block. We can't split a census block to make a precinct. It has to go along the lines. You can combine. All right, we are actually involved in the Block Boundary Suggestion Project with the U.S. government and the state. We're one of the few counties that actually is involved with this also. They're giving us a chance to make suggestions on how we want our blocks done. If you understand television resolution, which not everybody does, but the more dots you got, the sharper your picture is. The more blocks we have, the more we can fine tune those precincts to make it fit. Some places have these huge, massive 15, 20,000 acre pieces of land where nobody lives currently. And I say currently because we all know that changes in Brunswick County. We're going to be able to suggest things on up through spring of 2027 is kind of our deadline. I actually spoke with the lady at the federal government level in the Census Bureau, and she said we could actually continue in 28 and 29 and even into 30 before they submit the final census blocks. And we could continue to try and fine tune those for our purposes. The more we can fine tune them, also other things fall into being used for census blocks like voter tabulation districts, which we don't have to use, but when they're drawing lines for NC House and things like that, they use those also. So I got some.
Repeat, Can you repeat that?
We use the census block for precincts. Okay.
Right.
Census blocks are also used to calculate something called voter tabulation districts, which we don't have to use those at the precinct level, but say NC House seats or US House seats, they will also follow census block lines. And so the more we can fine tune those, the more they can use that to design the house districts, things like that.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but I just want to make sure I understand. As an example, the NC House, two NC House districts in
Mhm.
Brunswick County, 17 and 19. Those are the lines between those districts that you're referring to?
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
all right.
And they have to follow census block lines, just like we do.
Mhm.
And so that's where that comes into play. The finer we can make those, the better we can do.
Okay,
And then I've made some brief slides of examples. The pink lines that you see here, those are census blocks, and they're not square. When we first started talking about census blocks, I thought they were squares. They are just a random piece of land. Sometimes you could use a creek, sometimes you can use a road. And so I'm going to add the roads real quick so we can see them. Now, the green area is an actual neighborhood. Okay. The streets, of course, you can see are black. The pink is the census blocks. Now, if we wanted to add in that one section of green, we would actually have to grab the entire block inside the pink. So we can't just grab the green section. We got to grab all the stuff on the outside. And so sometimes it goes, okay, let's add this neighborhood. Well, if you look at the top right corner of that census block, there's some houses. So those people would be included in that precinct. And so you can't just go, let's make this neighborhood a voting precinct, because we got to look at the size of that block and who lives outside of the actual neighborhood, because they're going to be included. All right. And this is another one that we run into. Hard to tell how big this census block is. If you look, it's kind of goes to the right and then goes up to the right top corner. And about halfway, it actually meanders down. That census block is actually pretty big when I add the streets in. Yeah, wow is right. That probably is a couple of thousand acres. It's a pretty big chunk of land. Now, when it was designed in 2020, that's what it looks like now. That's the Mallory Creek area. And if you look at the top left, that's all new construction. If we look at how it looked in 2020, there was nothing there. And that's where we're running into problems. I have to use the blocks from 2020. Nobody was living there then. Now I've got all those houses. And so they all have to go vote somewhere. When we first looked at this development and we created Brunswick Forest, which was all this property to the left, there's a little road that actually goes from Mallory Creek to Brunswick Forest. It wasn't there when we made the precinct, according to the census blocks. And so we had to look, okay, everybody at Mallory Creek would have to drive all the way around Belleville to get into Brunswick Forest to vote, even though they're right there. Now the road's finished, so they can just cut through. This is a display of St. James, Southport, and Oak Island. And if you look down at the lower left, you'll see the scale is 1 to 54,044. Same scale, that's Green Swamp. So as you see, blocks can get really small, like at Oak Island, or really big, as in Green Swamp. And so this process that we're going through is going to draw a lot of these blocks, like the one we saw at Mallory Creek. There's probably going to be 7 or 8 more blocks in that one piece that we saw. It was one big block. It's probably going to get chopped up now. And so come 2030, we can fine tune it more. But until 2030, we really can't do a whole lot as far as that goes.
Now, what do you do with the communities that are being built where no one's living in?
That is the second problem, because the U.S. Census wants a road to be there before they actually draw a road there and use it as a census block. And so we've got plenty of plans for railroads are going to go, But until a road is put there, the lady in the email said, we want the roads there.
What if there's roads with no homes?
I can work with that. Because I can make that a suggestion and say, there's going to be homes there. They're just not there yet. But we can't go in and just say, I need you to make this development a census block if the development hasn't been started yet. Even if we have plans for it, I just can't do it. They can take the suggestion, but probably not going to follow it. And so it does. I mean, even if you look at this green swamp map, you'll see some areas that are just tiny little triangles.
You like that one?
Yeah, that little guy there.
Yeah.
Is probably about 15 acres, but that's the scale of this. The St. James one, and it's one of the things that if you notice, St. James is very populous. It's probably more populous than Southport is. I would go out on a limb and say Southport actually has more census blocks. And I'll tell you why. St. James is a golf course. And so you've got a lot of empty land in there, and then a lot of houses concentrated around the golf courses. And so you end up with a very large area, but very big census blocks.
Did they give you a number of people?
The census blocks do not tie to a number of people. And that's the misnomer.
Yeah.
It literally just looks at roads and landmarks and things like that. And so it does try to look a little bit at the population. We all know the population of St. James from 2010 to now has been tremendous. And so we will probably see some fine tuning in that area. The census block map that we've received from the federal government is not the most up to date. And I've already been in contact with them on adding the new streets that we've added over the last year and a half. I've got a meeting with GIS actually next week.
Do the GIS folks at the county level work with the federal
Yes.
folks also? Okay.
Yes, the Tiger is what they were talking about, which is basically trying to think of the right word. It's the main database that everybody uses in the whole United States. And so Tiger gets updated by local GIS and the state GIS. And so I'm going to meet with Andrew at our local GIS and see how often we can get our Tiger updated.
Just because I see a couple of confused looks in the audience behind you, could you just briefly define what GIS is for these folks?
GIS is, I don't know what the words are for it actually, but
Okay.
it's the mapping. It's the county mapping department. Basically every street, and you'd be surprised, street, topography, water. If you want to know where every pool is in the county, they've probably got a map for it. Because the pool department wanted a map of where all the pools were. They work with 911. And so if you call and say, I've got an emergency at my house, GIS and 911 have updated the map so the ambulances know how to get there. And that's one of the reasons it's so important to make sure that you are given the correct street name and the correct house number. So sometimes those vary. They shouldn't. So that's where GIS comes into play, is they handle all of that. And there's maps available on the internet where you can literally pull up your parcel on the map and click on it and see what your tax listing is and everything.
I can tell you what GIS means.
Yeah,
Geographic Information Systems.
yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sorry, I was just waiting.
Oh,
for it.
no, that's what I needed.
And those folks do play a big role in how we break up the county and precincts and everything else,
They
right?
don't really break it up. They just map it after it's done.
Okay. We break it up and they map it. Okay.
Yeah, they do annexations. So every time Shallotte annexes one lot on Copus Road, they add it to the annexation of Shallotte and show that it's there. So that's how it works. And that's just an example of census blocks and the fun of trying to figure out how it all fits together and what can go where. Because I also look at where the polling location is located, especially with planned neighborhoods and where the entrance and exit of the neighborhood is. So you could have people who live in a development, but if the entrance dumps out on the river road and it's going to be 3 minutes for them to get to Belleville School, or it's going to be 20 minutes for them to drive all the way around Leland to get to Brunswick Forest, I'm going to have them go to Belleville School. So, but I always take suggestions. If anybody wants to pop in, just let me know
All right.
first so I have time. And I can be happy to look at any certain part of the map if you want to.
Well, on the bottom of this map, I guess I assume that's the shoreline that we're looking at the very
Yes.
bottom. The area with all of the very narrow rectangles, is that Oak Island or?
Yes, it is.
Okay,
Yeah, every one of those rectangles is probably a street.
all right. So we would just combine some number of those blocks to make up Oak Island 1 and some of Oak Island 2 and so on and so forth.
Correct.
Okay. All right.
Yes, Joe.
Thanks for putting this together. Sarah, when you're meeting with Charlie and Frank, was this one of your topics about we need relief with these census blocks before 2030?
This was not part of our conversation at legislative day. No.
And it would take legislation, it seems
Well, I
like.
know it does. That's why I'm asking.
Yeah.
It's
It's,
because I know we've talked before, like we were
Mhm.
talking about St. James, we've got a substantial firehouse
Mhm.
in the development that could be probably used as a voting location.
yeah, and that's something we can talk about. Just pop in office. We'll talk.
And
about it.
I have had some dialogue with the legislative liaison at the State Board of Elections and the Brian Levesque, I cannot recall his title right now at the State Board,
F.
Chief of Staff, thank
Yep.
you. About the desire to have some relief on census blocks. And I think they were both of the opinion that census blocks go into so many other things when it comes to, taking chunks of land and creating something, i.e.
Mhm.
redistricting NC House and Senate districts, redistricting state or federal House districts. So I think a lump overhaul of us having to use census blocks is probably not likely. And it probably would require some local legislative relief.
So am I correct in understanding that our ability to change census blocks between censuses is extremely limited? Is that I know I'm phrasing that, but properly.
The census blocks can be changed. That's a possibility. The problem is where it says here in the statute with the most recent federal decennial census, which is only done every 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's our issue is they create census blocks all the time, but it's the blocks they go by for the decennial census is the ones we have to use.
Okay, so if we had a new, I'm just thinking off the top of my head here, Butch, just so I understand. And specifically, I'm thinking about there's a development going in between Route 904, 17 and P Landing Road in, I guess it's Longwood. It's going to be 3,000 living units.
Mhm.
And today it's just open land. And that's probably going to be built and substantially populated by 2030. Do we have any option on how we can handle that, or are we just stuck until 2030?
It really depends on how big the census block is. I mean, if the area where that particular housing development takes up one entire census block and just that census block, we're in great shape. If it's that chunk, if that piece of land is inside a census block that is much larger and also contains random houses 4 miles up the street that are literally a mile and a half from a polling location, let's say walk a mile.
Mm-hmm.
And we want to actually take that piece, that big development, and move it to say Union School or Shingle Tree 2 or something like that. I can't chop it in half and split the voters. Somebody's making a drive. It's either
Okay.
going to be the 15 people at one end or the 3,000 at the other, but somebody's going to have to make a drive. And that's where census blocks versus convenience of voting butts heads sometimes.
Okay. Just one of the numerous constraints that we have to operate under.
Well, I mean, there's no rule saying somebody can't drive to a polling location, but we try not to do that.
Only try to minimize.
Really
it.
try hard not to. And Brunswick County's big. I mean, everybody has ever moved here learns really fast. Everything is 15 to 20 minutes away.
Mhm.
It's just part of living here. So if we were a smaller county and more densely populated, it wouldn't be an issue, but we're getting there, but we're not yet. Give us 10 more years.
Just, and this is a question. You see this affecting our number of precincts?
Not yet,
Okay,
but we hope we can add some precincts.
okay.
Again, our biggest thing is always the same thing.
Right. Yeah,
Where are we going to put voters to vote?
right.
I could make 47 precincts here with the current census blocks that we currently have. I don't have anywhere for them to vote.
Right.
So buildings is always going to be our problem.
So I mean, we keep talking about the voting locations. I know Ed and I put together a list of possible locations last year for Southport and Oak Island. Can we revisit those again? I know some of them are not ideal, but maybe something's better than nothing.
That's something we could always take a look at. I mean, we've got a little group together and we'll take a look. Two of my group people are here.
Would you do me a favor? Could you email us a copy of this?
Sure.
Okay.
Thank you.
I know you and I sat after the last month's meeting, and I found that extremely informative. And as I do this, as I think somebody said, we hear a lot about census blocks, and I had no idea what we were talking about. So, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Any other questions?
I have a quick one, and you
Certainly.
stated earlier that the amount of people in a census block was not a factor in creating those census blocks.
That's correct.
So you can have someone, I was looking at what Oak Island and those, they were just all the streets there. So you could have 20 people in one of those blocks.
That's correct.
And then I look at what they did in St. James in their large areas, you could have a couple of hundred in there.
A couple of thousand.
Maybe not quite that.
Yeah. But you could.
But anyway, there's no reference to the number
Doesn't
of
seem to
people.
be much rhyme or reason to it. And even when Sarah and I were in the meeting, our first initial meeting, and they showed the different types of census blocks and densities, it varied so widely. One census block could have 0 to 20 people, and another one could have 2,000-3,000. I mean, if you go somewhere like New York City, one building could be a census block, if you really think about it. So it gets pretty crazy real fast.
Do we know what the census folks use as their criteria for defining a census block? How do they define them, I guess?
That was basically these,
Okay,
bounded by visible features and invisible features.
all right.
And they also look a little bit, I mean, like we saw Green Swamp, nobody lives in a Green Swamp. Maybe 3 people, I don't know. It's not a large population. And it's a huge piece of land because they don't really have anybody living there.
Okay.
And so they basically looked at where are the roads, and roads could be a trail through the woods, but it's visible. It could be a ditch that's dug through there for irrigation. All these kinds of things, it all comes into play, and that's how they draw the line.
All right, I think I might have the same concern Jerry was expressing, and it's not anything we have any control over, but if I were working for the Census Bureau, I need some kind of criteria to say what in general is a census block. And yeah, I can define it by property lines, city, so on and so forth. But, do I need X number of people or,
I don't
Can
think
I-
they're too
can
worried
I
about
chime
I
it.
realize none of us
Can I-
have that
Can I
answer.
chime in? So when they're creating census blocks, they are not looking at how many people are in it, but that is the smallest unit of data that they could put out. So when you look at the census data, say you want to know how many women are in a certain area between the ages of 30 and 40. The census block is the smallest unit geographically that they could put that information out. Now, when they are automatically assigning census blocks, they do have a hierarchy for how they come up with them because it's automated. I mean, there's not a person up there looking and going, oh, the street looks good. They prioritize primary and secondary roads. So like Highway 17, that is going to be a boundary of a census block because it makes sense. Named neighborhood roads. So if there's an existing road, it has a name, it's in a neighborhood, that would likely become a border to a census block. Other, smaller roads, they are going to have a higher value than a power line, but they can get down to the granular and use a railroad tracks or a power line to create it. But it is all done, automatically by a computer.
Yeah.
But that is why us participating in this recommendation project with the census, it's going to let us go in and say, well, you didn't really prioritize this little road in this neighborhood, but we can look at it and say it makes sense for this neighborhood to be split in half. Maybe down the road. So we want you to create a smaller census block. It doesn't mean we're required to use it to split a precinct. But in my opinion, the more census blocks we get them to give us where there might be growth coming, the more opportunity we have to adjust the lines down the road.
Okay.
Exactly. And it's like I said also, the data, when we got a preview map of the current census blocks that they're working with and what they're proposing, and we have an opportunity to go in and add. And when I started looking at the preview map, basically any road that was created in the last 18 months isn't on there. And so I've already reached out to the census and said, we need to update this. And they told me to get the GIS, and that's updating the Tiger system, which is what they're using to design the census blocks. There was a whole new development at Compass Point
Mhm.
up at the top.
Yep.
Yeah, they don't have any of those roads. They're already building houses out there. So they should get that new data once I meet with GIS, and we'll get that in there. And that'll help us make more blocks. And so every one of these developments that's already started paving streets, I'm going to try to get them in there.
So you're doing like Terrapin and East Lake and
I'm gonna try to get them all in there. And luckily, when I reached out to the lady, she was literally, you can keep updating this until 2030. And so that's what I'm gonna try to do, is make sure that it might be on a rolling 6 months, I'm sending them more streets. And
Great.
so we can keep pushing it. I just got to meet with Andrew and so that he can fill me in on the process. And maybe me and him can work together and get this going.
Who is Andrew?
Andrew's head of GIS department here at the county.
Okay.
Very easy to work with. They have helped me so much with geocode. So we're coming a long way.
So this is all part of the information that we utilize to be able to put folks into a specific precinct based upon the HAVA document that has 123 Main Street or whatever their address is on it.
Correct.
Okay. Okay.
Just another question.
Sure.
Are we getting ready for the 2030 census? Are these changes that we may make before 2030?
2030.
2030, okay.
We've got a few things that we can adjust
Mhm.
currently. It takes a few months to actually do a precinct redraw. There's a whole process that we have to go through with the state and with GIS. And quite honestly, there's public meeting involved and things like that in order to do it. So this year's not the year to do it. But maybe after this election, there's a couple of places we may look at to see if we can fine tune a little bit. Again, I would love to do more.
Mhm.
I need a lot of voting places. I need big parking lots and huge rooms. Give me 100 parking spaces and 2,000 square feet of just empty. I'll put some voters in it.
Mhm.
And then I'll just add in, I know every time we talk about needing big rooms and big parking lots, if we were to triple our precincts and, you say, well, what if we have a smaller spot with fewer people? Keep in mind that every precinct has to have probably $15,000 worth of equipment to operate. So having a small precinct thinking, well, this little, one room schoolhouse or whatever it is can handle 200 people, that is a significant investment.
It is.
Mhm.
I'll wait till we get to
Yeah.
comments. I'll withdraw.
You know, I think the five of us are appreciative of that fact. We know that it's a significant investment to create a new precinct. I don't know personally if we have a whole lot of choice otherwise to accommodate the growth within the county. And I realize that it becomes a budget issue, asking the county for more money and more money and more money. But personally, I think, unfortunately, that's a challenge we're going to have to face fairly soon.
Yes.
I don't know that with 150,000 registered voters, we can survive with 26 precincts any longer. And, so, if it becomes an issue with the county management and we come back in with our budget for next year or the year after and say, hey, we've got to break up precincts to be able to manage the growth because we can't stop the growth. That's out of our control. We just have
They
to
can.
adjust for it. So, that's going to be a budget issue for the county and,
It will, and I think it would, no matter what, require additional conversation because the timeline for us submitting our requested budget is right after the general election, and we would not have had time to adequately prepare for what equipment would be needed and how many splits we can make. So that would most likely come after the budget has been approved by the county.
Mm.
they say it comes after the general election. I thought we were working on a
Well,
fiscal year.
so the fiscal year begins July 1st, but the county departments start putting together their budget request in December,
Okay.
and turning it in and then having meetings. I mean, all of that is pretty much finished by March, so if we can't really dive into the logistics of, do we have a polling place? How many voters would this put in this new polling place? Can it handle it? We would likely be beyond the point where we have had dialogue with the county about our budget request. And I just wanted to make that clear. I'm not opposed to doing that. We can always go back to the commissioners after the fact or give, a guess about what we think it would look like. But finance operates very black and white. I don't know that they would actually give us money for a guess, So it's definitely more dialogue we can have with administration going into the next budget request year, but
So,
the timing is challenging.
Go ahead.
so to your point, I'm going to ask a broad question. What
Mhm.
can we do? Okay, we're talking about 2030, this big date where we can redraw things. What can we do before the 28 election?
Well, and it would actually be after 2030 because it takes them time to compile.
No, that's not my
this. Yeah.
question. My question is, what can we do for the 28 election that's tangible to actually help?
Well, we would have to make those changes likely in next spring after the general election. So this would be something that would come up ahead of the next budget that we submit to the county,
We get-
because after that point, we're in a municipal, straight into a primary, straight into a general.
Right, we all agree the status.
So
quo.
it's next spring is
So
when
we
we
all
would have
agree
to
the
do
status,
this.
we all agree the status quo is not tangible. Is there a plan of action we can get ready for 28?
Well, we do have the growth work group, and we have identified at least 3 precincts that need immediate attention that are going to be a priority. And we have several others that we have identified that need some attention as well. So we're going to make the changes that we can with what we have. And one of the things we have is census blocks that don't necessarily align with what we need.
Okay.
I live in one.
Yep.
I think how we handle this as a department is going to be an ongoing challenge for several years, but at some point we're going to have to go back to the county and say, hey, we need X more than what we've got today. And so we can probably prepare them for that coming down the road. Anyway, okay. Mr. Johnson, anything else?
That's it.
Very informative. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very
Thanks,
much.
Butch.
Butch, that was very good.
Very good.
Feel
Excellent.
like
Very
I understand
compelling.
it better now too.
All right. Got dark. The next item on the agenda is unfinished business. Do we have any unfinished business, Madam Director?
We do not.
Any other unfinished business from any of the members? No? Okay. New business. Any new business,
No, sir, not for me.
folks?
Not for me.
No? Okay. Any other business or informal discussion?
Yes.
Floor is
I
yours.
was reading through the agenda for the state board meeting, and there was a line regarding an instance of something that's happening in Anson County. Right, so there's some kind of a lawsuit that's being, I mean, didn't really care about the particulars, but what interested me most was that Anson County was petitioning the state board for funds to assist with this litigation. So I want to know what kind of funds we can get from the state board to assist us with anything.
Zero.
Oh, then why would
Yes, we
Anson
do
County,
not get funds from the state
then
for.
why would they be petitioning for that?
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't
Because when I
know.
saw that, I was like,
Yeah.
well, then we should ask the state board. Now, what kind of pressure can the state board put on our county commissioners to approve money for us?
Historically, they have not really gotten involved in those sorts of things. But the last time I heard anything like that coming up, it was a different administration. So I don't know what that might look like these days.
Because I recall we were discussing a couple years ago about how the schools were kind of pushing back on letting us use their buildings, and we were going to get to the point where we were going to have to go to the state to have them put pressure on the county Board of Education. So I don't know why that would,
Yeah.
how that would differ.
Luckily, we don't have that problem anymore. The Board of Education has been very willing to give us teacher work days. They have a 10-year
Well, I just
calendar
use
for
that
planning purposes.
No, I just want an example. I
Yeah,
put pressure, onto county
Mhm.
officials where, we obviously have this big
Mhm.
budget. Oh, it's not quite
Yes. Yeah.
working for us.
Mhm.
And I just was wondering, obviously we have more members, more residents, so they're taking in more money. So why don't we get our share of the more money? That's my comment, I guess. Thank you.
Okay. Anything else for the good of the cause? Chair would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
We have a motion to adjourn. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.